Have you ever wondered why the way we sleep today is so different from the way people slept just a few centuries ago? It's easy to take for granted our modern sleep habits, the 8 hours at night, tucked under blankets, with the gentle hum of lights or white noise filling the room. But sleep, as we know, it is a remarkably recent invention. If you traveled back to medieval Europe, you would find a world in which people didn't sleep in a single, unbroken stretch through the night. Instead, they embraced a rhythm that seems alien to modern eyes, 2 distinct periods of sleep, separated by hours of wakefulness, with life happening in the middle. They called it the first sleep and the second sleep, though these weren't just casual terms. They were central to the way people lived, worked, and thought about the night. Imagine for a moment a typical medieval village. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and darkness begins to settle over the cobblestone streets, the thatched cottages, and the dense forests beyond. There are no street lamps, no glowing screens, no constant artificial light to extend the day. Darkness is absolute, enveloping the village like a heavy cloak. In this world, night is not something to be fought with electric bulbs or gadgets. It is a natural, unavoidable part of life, a time when humans had to adjust their activities, their meals, and their very sleep patterns to the cycle of the sun. Families gather indoors, the fire crackles in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Candles are lit sparingly, for they are precious and costly. People prepare for the first sleep. It is the beginning of their night, a few hours of rest that usually starts shortly after sunset. This first sleep may last until around midnight, though the exact hours can vary depending on the season, longer in winter, shorter in summer. It is a time to lie down, relax, and allow the body to settle into the natural rhythm of darkness. But unlike our modern sleep, this first rest is not the end of the night. In medieval Europe, it was perfectly normal for people to wake up after a few hours. They would rise from their beds, stretch their limbs, and step quietly into the dimly lit room or out into the cool night air. This period of wakefulness could last anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. Far from being a sign of restlessness or insomnia, it was an accepted and expected part of life. Historical records and writings of the time describe this wakeful period in detail. Diaries, letters, and even legal documents occasionally note people carrying out important tasks during this time. What did they do during these hours of wakefulness? The answer varies, but it is fascinating. Many people used the time for quiet reflection or prayer. Nighttime offered solitude and stillness, a chance to contemplate life, mortality, and the world around them. Religious practices were often scheduled to take advantage of these hours. For monks and devout Christians, it was a time to recite prayers, chant psalms, or meditate on Scripture. The silence of the night amplified the spiritual experience, creating a sense of intimacy with the divine. Others used the time for practical purposes. In villages and towns, people might tend to animals, check on fires, or prepare food for the next day. Some walked quietly through their homes or neighborhoods, mindful of neighbors and the rhythms of community life. This wakeful period was not idle. It was productive in subtle and meaningful ways. For some, it was a time for creativity, writing letters, composing poetry, or thinking through complex problems without the distractions of daylight. Imagine a medieval scholar or artisan sitting by candlelight, immersed in thought, fully aware that the rest of the world is asleep. The first and second sleep pattern also shaped social life in unexpected ways. People would sometimes visit neighbors during these hours, sharing stories or comforting the sick. Marriages, births, and deaths might be discussed in hushed tones under the cover of darkness. In a society where daylight hours were dominated by work, farming, and chores, the night offered a rare opportunity for connection and reflection. The concept of the night as a separate, valuable portion of the day is almost lost in modern times, but in medieval Europe it was central to human experience. Interestingly, literature from the era provides glimpses into how pervasive and normal this practice was. In writings from Chaucer, Shakespeare, and other chroniclers, there are references to first sleep and second sleep, to people waking in the middle of the night, and to the kinds of activities that were considered appropriate during these hours. Poetry, religious texts, and even mundane household records acknowledge that segmented sleep was an ordinary, unremarkable fact of life. Waking at night was not cause for concern, it was simply part of the human schedule. Modern readers often find this hard to imagine because our world is so different. With artificial lighting, television, smartphones, and constant connectivity, we have pushed the boundaries of daylight far into the night. Our circadian rhythms are influenced by glowing screens and bright indoor lights. We have conditioned ourselves to sleep in one consolidated block from roughly 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., sometimes interrupted only by a restless dream or a noisy alarm clock. But for our ancestors, sleep was dictated by nature, not technology, and their bodies responded accordingly. From a biological perspective, this two-shift sleep makes a lot of sense. Humans are naturally attuned to cycles of light and darkness. The hormone melatonin rises in response to fading light, signaling the body that it is time to sleep, and falls as daylight approaches, waking the body. Before artificial light, humans followed these cycles much more closely. Sleeping in two segments allowed the body to rest and rejuvenate in alignment with natural rhythms. Waking in the middle of the night was not abnormal, it was physiological. There are even suggestions from modern sleep research that this segmented pattern may have advantages. People who practice biphasic or polyphasic sleep sometimes report increased creativity, improved problem solving, and a sense of calm during wakeful periods at night. In a way, medieval people may have been living in a rhythm that was more natural and attuned to their biology than the 8-hour sleep schedule we now consider standard. The cultural and psychological implications are equally fascinating. Waking in the middle of the night offered time for introspection, for contemplating one's life, and for quiet acts of kindness or service. In an era when life was often harsh, uncertain, and governed by the demands of survival, these quiet hours were precious. They provided a space for reflection, creativity, and human connection, a time when the world slowed down and allowed individuals to engage with life in a deeply personal way. Even the structure of the home and the household reflected this rhythm. Beds were often shared, families slept together, and the night was punctuated by the rituals of first and second sleep. Houses were designed to accommodate the needs of night activity, from the placement of candles and lamps to the layout of rooms where people might sit quietly while others slept. The night was a living, breathing part of medieval existence, full of meaning and activity. Over time, however, this pattern began to change. The advent of artificial lighting, indoor heating, and technological innovations gradually shifted sleep toward a single, uninterrupted stretch. Industrialization and strict work schedules reinforced this trend, and by the 17th and 18th centuries, the old segmented sleep rhythm was largely forgotten. Today, the idea of waking up in the middle of the night to meditate, write, or visit a neighbor seems strange, even impractical. But for centuries, it was the normal, accepted, and natural way to live. In the end, understanding the first and second sleep is more than a historical curiosity. It's a window into the daily life, biology, and culture of our ancestors. It reminds us that what we consider normal, sleep, is not a universal human experience, but a product of modern society, technology, and convenience. By exploring the ways people lived with the night, we gain insight into the rhythms, challenges, and wisdom of medieval life. So, as you prepare to sleep tonight, consider this. For hundreds of years, humans approached the night differently. They slept, woke, reflected, and slept again, embracing a rhythm dictated by nature rather than clocks or screens. The medieval two-shift sleep was not just about rest. It was about living fully in alignment with the world around them, finding meaning and purpose even in the darkness. And perhaps in understanding their patterns, we can learn something about our own relationship with sleep, rest, and the quiet hours of the night. Back in the medieval period, daily life was closely intertwined with the rising and setting of the sun. Unlike our modern world, where electric lighting stretches the day well into the night, the people of medieval Europe were at the mercy of natural light. The sun dictated almost every aspect of their lives, from the hours spent working in the fields or workshops to the times set aside for meals, prayer, and rest. When darkness fell, it wasn't simply a backdrop for leisure. It was an all-encompassing force that shaped human behavior and dictated how the night would be experienced. In this context, the notion of sleep as a single, uninterrupted block was virtually unknown. Instead, people adapted to the long hours of darkness with a rhythm that modern society has nearly forgotten: the segmented sleep schedule of first and second sleep. As dusk approached, households would prepare for the onset of night. Families would gather in the main living areas, where a single fire often provided warmth and light. The hearth was more than a functional feature. It was the heart of the home, offering the only reliable illumination as evening descended. Candles and oil lamps were expensive and reserved for specific uses, so the darkness was never entirely banished. People learned to navigate their homes and villages with the low, flickering light of the fire, adjusting their activities to what was possible in dim conditions. In this way, the night became a space of both necessity and reflection, a time when the rhythm of life slowed down and the natural cycle of light and darkness guided human activity. The first sleep began shortly after sunset. Families would prepare for bed by performing simple routines, extinguishing some of the firelight, spreading blankets, and arranging their sleeping quarters. Beds in medieval homes were often shared, sometimes by entire families, and were more than places of rest. They were spaces for warmth, intimacy, and security. The first sleep typically lasted several hours, usually from dusk until around midnight, although this could vary depending on the season, geographic location, and specific household routines. It was a period of genuine rest, a time when the body and mind could recover from the day's work, allowing humans to respond naturally to the rhythm of darkness. However, the first sleep was not considered the entire night. Unlike modern notions of continuous sleep, people would awaken after a few hours, entering a period of wakefulness. This was not seen as a disturbance or a problem. Rather, it was an expected part of the nightly rhythm. People rose quietly, mindful not to disturb others, and moved through their homes in low light or in complete darkness. They might sit by the hearth, engage in prayer or reflection, or carry out quiet chores that did not require full illumination. This period of wakefulness could last anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, depending on individual schedules and preferences, and it was often considered a productive, even enriching, time of the night. During these waking hours, the night became a private domain, offering opportunities for both practical and spiritual engagement. People would tend to animals, particularly in rural households, ensuring that livestock were secure and safe from predators. Fires might be checked or rekindled, food prepared for the next day, or tools repaired quietly by lamplight. In an era when daylight hours were dominated by labor, These nocturnal tasks allowed for focus and attention without interruption. The stillness of night enabled individuals to concentrate, reflect, and organize their thoughts, a rhythm of life shaped entirely by natural conditions rather than artificial constructs. Religious devotion played a significant role during this wakeful period. Medieval Europe was deeply spiritual, and many individuals used the quiet hours of night for prayer and meditation. Monks and nuns in monasteries, as well as laypeople in their homes, would engage in chanting psalms, reading sacred texts, or performing acts of devotion that required solitude. These practices were not limited to structured religious settings. Private households often had designated spaces for prayer or contemplation. The period between first and second sleep offered a unique opportunity to focus on spiritual matters, free from the distractions of daytime labor and noise. In many ways, the night became a sacred time, a liminal space where humans could connect with their inner lives and the divine. Social interaction also found a place in this nocturnal period. Though quieter and more intimate than daytime gatherings, people sometimes visited neighbors or family members during the middle of the night. These visits could be practical, such as checking on a sick relative or sharing food, or social, involving storytelling, discussion, or comfort. In small villages where communal ties were strong, this practice reinforced social cohesion. The night was not only a time for individual reflection, it was also a space for subtle, meaningful social engagement that modern, rigid sleep schedules rarely allow. The psychological dimension of this wakeful period was equally important. Humans are naturally attuned to cycles of light and darkness, and the middle of the night wakefulness aligned with circadian rhythms. Our ancestors' bodies responded to the gradual onset of darkness, the flickering firelight, and the natural quiet of night in ways that modern artificial lighting often disrupts. Waking after a few hours of sleep allowed people to reset mentally, process the events of the day, and prepare for the second sleep. It was a time of calm reflection, of mental organization, and of planning for the hours to come. Literary and historical sources from the medieval period provide valuable insight into these patterns. References to first and second sleep appear in diaries, letters, and legal documents, revealing that waking at night was not extraordinary but rather routine. Scholars and writers noted these rhythms casually, discussing them as natural aspects of life. Even works of fiction and poetry, such as those by Chaucer, include allusions to night awakenings, suggesting that segmented sleep was so normalized that it required no explanation. For modern audiences, these references offer a window into the intimate, everyday experiences of people centuries ago. The home environment supported this two-part sleep schedule. Beds were arranged to accommodate shared use, warmth, and nighttime activity. Fireplaces and hearths provided essential light and heat, while small lamps and candles were reserved for tasks requiring illumination. Rooms were organized to allow quiet movement, and families adapted their routines to the natural cycles of darkness and light. In this way, architecture, household objects, and daily practices were all designed to support the rhythms of segmented sleep. Seasonal changes also played a crucial role. Winter nights were long, extending for many hours, and the period between first and second sleep was often longer than in summer. Conversely, during the long days of summer, sleep patterns shifted, with shorter nights leading to shorter periods of wakefulness. Human activity, labor, and social schedules were all adjusted according to these seasonal variations, creating a flexible, adaptive approach to sleep that modern fixed schedules rarely replicate. This segmented sleep pattern also had implications for creativity and intellectual work. The quiet, undisturbed hours between first and second sleep provided an ideal environment for writing, composing music, thinking, or solving complex problems. Without the distractions of daytime activity, individuals could focus deeply, tapping into a level of concentration that is often difficult to achieve in the modern world. Scholars, artisans, and writers found inspiration during these hours, using the rhythm of segmented sleep to enhance their productivity and insight. Furthermore, the wakeful period offered opportunities for emotional and relational reflection. Individuals could contemplate personal matters, reconcile conflicts, or process emotions in solitude. In an era without digital distractions, the night allowed for deep introspection, fostering emotional intelligence and self-awareness. This intimate engagement with one's own thoughts and feelings was a regular, normalized aspect of life rather than a rare luxury. Even mundane chores benefited from the segmented sleep pattern. Tasks such as mending clothes, preparing food, or tending to household needs could be done quietly during the night without disturbing others. The night became a productive, purposeful period, complementing the labor of the day and supporting the household economy. In this sense, first sleep and wakefulness were not simply about rest and activity. They were integral to the structure, efficiency, and functioning of medieval life. Importantly, this pattern was not a sign of poor health or insomnia. Modern interpretations might label waking in the middle of the night as a sleep disturbance, but for medieval people, it was entirely natural. Historical medical texts sometimes describe the phenomenon, noting that it was common and expected. People did not consider themselves abnormal for waking at night. Rather, it was a shared experience, a rhythm ingrained in culture and biology alike. The middle of the night wakefulness also intersected with religious and cultural beliefs about the nature of night and darkness. In some traditions, the hours between first and second sleep were considered liminal, a space where humans were closer to the spiritual realm. Dreams, visions, and meditative states were often associated with this period, giving it a mystical dimension. The night was a time not only of practical activity but also of reflection, spiritual insight, and connection to forces beyond the mundane world. As time went on, this pattern of first sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep was observed across Europe. Rural and urban communities alike adapted to the natural cycles of darkness, shaping work, prayer, social interaction, and family life around it. It was a rhythm that synchronized individuals with their environment, promoting health, productivity, and social cohesion. The segmented sleep schedule was a cornerstone of daily life, deeply embedded in the culture and consciousness of the era. Yet, despite its centrality, this practice began to fade with technological and social changes. The introduction of artificial lighting, whether through candles, lamps, or eventually electricity, extended the perceived day. Indoor heating, nighttime entertainment, and industrial labor schedules gradually reshaped human activity. By the 17th and 18th centuries, continuous, uninterrupted sleep began to replace the segmented pattern, and waking at night became increasingly seen as unusual. The rhythms of medieval life gave way to the structured, clock-driven schedules of modern society, erasing centuries of nocturnal tradition. Understanding the segmented sleep of medieval people offers more than historical insight. It sheds light on the natural rhythms of human life and the ways culture, environment, and technology shape behavior. The first sleep, the period of wakefulness, and the second sleep reveal a complex interplay between biology, social life, practical needs, and spirituality. For our ancestors, night was not merely a time of darkness and inactivity. It was a dynamic, purposeful, and meaningful part of existence. Even today, some researchers and sleep scientists are rediscovering the potential benefits of segmented sleep. People experimenting with biphasic sleep schedules report increased creativity, enhanced reflection, and a sense of calm during wakeful periods at night. In this way, the wisdom of medieval sleep patterns continues to resonate, offering lessons about how humans might align more closely with their natural rhythms, even in a modern, artificial world. As we imagine the medieval night, firelight flickering, the household settling for first sleep, then rising to move quietly through the dark, we begin to understand how deeply humans have always been shaped by light, darkness, and the cycles of nature. Segmented sleep was more than habit. It was a response to the environment, a cultural practice, and a lived experience that defined the rhythm of life. It reminds us that the way we sleep today is not universal, not inevitable, but a product of a particular historical moment, shaped by technology, society, and convenience. The quiet hours of the night between first and second sleep were a time for reflection, devotion, creativity, and connection. They were a period when the boundaries between work, spirituality, and personal life blurred in a harmonious rhythm dictated by nature itself. In understanding this, we gain insight not only into medieval life, but also into the timeless human need for rest, reflection, and purposeful wakefulness. The night, as our ancestors experienced it, was alive with possibility, a space for thought, action, and presence that modern schedules often overlook. Humans have always been creatures of light and darkness. Long before electricity illuminated our nights, before the invention of lamps, bulbs, and screens, our ancestors lived according to the natural rhythms of the world. Sunlight dictated activity, darkness dictated rest, and the body, finely attuned to these cycles, responded in ways we are only beginning to fully understand. The segmented sleep pattern of the medieval period, with its first sleep and second sleep, was not an arbitrary cultural quirk. It was a reflection of the biological rhythms inherent in human life, a response to natural light cycles, and a practice that was observed consistently across time. In its place, modern science now offers insight into why this biphasic sleep pattern existed. Humans are governed by circadian rhythms, internal biological clocks that regulate cycles of sleep and wakefulness, hormone production, body temperature, and numerous physiological processes. One of the key players in these rhythms is melatonin, a hormone produced by the pineal gland in response to darkness. Melatonin signals the body that it is time to rest, initiating drowsiness, lowering body temperature, and preparing the mind and body for sleep. When daylight fades, melatonin levels rise. As morning approaches, they fall, naturally waking the body. In medieval Europe, where artificial light was limited to small amounts of candlelight or fire, melatonin cycles were closely aligned with the sun. As evening descended, people would naturally feel sleepy and retire for their first sleep. After several hours, the body would reach a natural low point in core temperature and alertness, only to gradually wake as the night progressed. This natural awakening coincided with the historical phenomenon of the midnight wakefulness, a period that was productive, reflective, and culturally embedded. Far from being a disturbance, this awakening was a physiological response to the interplay of light, darkness, and circadian rhythms, and it was understood as a normal part of life. Historical accounts of this biphasic sleep provide fascinating context. Diaries, letters, and personal accounts from the medieval period frequently mention first sleep and second sleep, often casually, as though these concepts were universally understood. For example, in the writings of European chroniclers and in legal records, references to individuals rising in the middle of the night are common. A person might note that they woke after first sleep to pray, visit neighbors, or attend to household duties. Such accounts reveal that waking during the night was not unusual or concerning. It was a natural part of human experience. Literature from the period also corroborates these patterns. Geoffrey Chaucer, the famed English poet of the 14th century, makes indirect references to segments of sleep in his works, highlighting the commonplace understanding of nocturnal routines. Shakespeare, writing centuries later, also alludes to periods of wakefulness in the night, suggesting that the practice endured across centuries. These literary references are more than mere artistic flourishes. They provide evidence that biphasic sleep was an integral part of daily life, recognized and accepted across social strata, from peasants to scholars, from rural villagers to urban dwellers. Biologically, there is strong evidence to support the notion that biphasic sleep was not only natural but potentially beneficial. Studies of modern populations living without access to artificial light, including certain rural communities and indigenous groups, reveal patterns of segmented sleep remarkably similar to those described in medieval Europe. In these populations, people often sleep in two phases, waking for an hour or two during the night before returning to sleep until dawn. During the wakeful period, individuals report engaging in reflection, social interaction, prayer, or quiet tasks, echoing the historical accounts. This suggests that human physiology is predisposed to segmented sleep when natural light cues dominate the environment. Sleep researchers also highlight the cognitive and emotional benefits of segmented sleep. Waking in the middle of the night provides an opportunity for quiet reflection, problem solving, and emotional processing. It allows the mind to consolidate memories, process experiences, and prepare psychologically for the next day. In medieval Europe, these benefits may have been recognized intuitively, if not scientifically. The wakeful hours between first and second sleep were often used for meditation, reading, prayer, and other activities that nurtured the mind and spirit. This alignment of biological rhythms and cultural practices created a lifestyle that was both natural and sustainable. The mid-night wakefulness was also a space for creativity. Historians speculate that some of the period's literary and artistic work may have been composed during these quiet hours, when distraction was minimal and the mind was attuned to subtle rhythms. The flickering light of the hearth or a small candle would illuminate manuscripts, tools, or instruments, allowing individuals to work with a sense of intimacy and focus. The psychological effect of this stillness cannot be underestimated. Without modern interruptions, the mind was free to wander, imagine, and innovate. This may help explain why the period produced such rich artistic and literary output, even under conditions that we might consider harsh or primitive. It is also worth noting that the biphasic sleep pattern had social and cultural dimensions deeply intertwined with biology. People adapted their households, towns, and daily routines to accommodate these rhythms. Kitchens, living areas, and sleeping quarters were arranged to facilitate quiet nocturnal activity. Families slept together in close quarters, ensuring warmth and safety, while the wakeful hours were respected as private, reflective, or productive time. Community life recognized and reinforced these patterns. Neighbors would not disturb each other unnecessarily during the night, and social activities were often scheduled with awareness of the segmented sleep cycle. The night, therefore, was both a personal and communal rhythm, supported biologically and culturally. Seasonal variations further shaped this rhythm. In winter, nights were longer, and the interval between first and second sleep could extend, allowing for more extended periods of reflection or activity. In summer, when nights were short, the wakeful period was correspondingly brief. Humans adapted flexibly to these changing conditions, demonstrating a close alignment between physiology, environment, and social life. This adaptability highlights the sophistication of medieval sleep practices, which were grounded in an intuitive understanding of natural cycles. Interestingly, the concept of first and second sleep has parallels in other cultures. Anthropologists and historians have noted that segmented sleep patterns were common in many pre-industrial societies across Europe, Africa, and Asia. While the specifics varied, the underlying principle, sleeping in phases aligned with darkness, was widespread. This suggests that biphasic sleep is not merely a European phenomenon, but may reflect a universal human adaptation to the natural environment, rooted in biology and reinforced by culture. The decline of segmented sleep, beginning in the 17th century and accelerating with industrialization, coincides with the widespread adoption of artificial lighting and urbanization. As homes were illuminated for longer hours and work schedules became regimented by clocks rather than natural light, people began consolidating sleep into a single, uninterrupted stretch. The biological and cultural pattern that had persisted for centuries was gradually displaced, replaced by the continuous sleep schedule we now consider standard. This shift, however, came at a cost. Waking at night, once normal and productive, came to be seen as a symptom of insomnia or disorder. Humans were encouraged to resist their natural rhythms, forcing bodies attuned to biphasic cycles into artificial patterns. Modern science now provides a framework to understand why waking in the middle of the night was biologically and psychologically natural. Circadian research shows that human sleep architecture is flexible, with natural peaks and troughs of alertness even during the night. The rise and fall of melatonin, combined with changes in core body temperature and neuronal activity, create windows of wakefulness that can be both restorative and stimulating. When people are allowed to follow these natural rhythms, as medieval Europeans did, sleep is not merely rest, it becomes a period of reflection, creativity, and renewal. Historical and literary evidence combined with modern biology paints a vivid picture. Humans are not naturally designed for a single, unbroken 8-hour sleep. Instead, our physiology has evolved to accommodate periods of rest and activity, aligned with the cycles of light and darkness. The medieval first and second sleep is a testament to this alignment, showing how biology, environment, and culture can converge to create a natural and functional human rhythm. It is also important to recognize the psychological dimension of biphasic sleep. Waking during the night provides an opportunity to process emotions, resolve mental tension, and consolidate memory. In a world without the distractions of modern life, this period of wakefulness offered clarity, perspective, and insight. People could reflect on personal relationships, community matters, or spiritual concerns. They could plan, problem, solve, and engage in introspection without interruption. This alignment of biological need and mental activity created a night that was rich, purposeful, and meaningful. In sum, the biology behind the two shifts of medieval sleep was not accidental. It was rooted in human physiology, reinforced by natural light cycles, and embedded in cultural practice. First sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep formed a rhythm that allowed humans to rest, reflect, create, and connect with the world and each other. Medieval Europeans lived in harmony with their biology, responding to darkness and light in ways that supported health, productivity, and social cohesion. The wakeful period was not an anomaly. It was an integral part of life, celebrated, utilized, and understood as natural. Even today, the implications of this rhythm are being explored. Sleep researchers studying populations without access to artificial light, as well as experiments with biphasic or segmented sleep in modern societies, suggest that waking in the middle of the night can have cognitive, emotional, and creative benefits. The wisdom of medieval sleep practices, grounded in biology and reinforced by culture, offers lessons for modern humans that sleep is not merely a passive state, but a dynamic, interactive, and flexible process aligned with nature. The historical record, combined with biological evidence, paints a compelling picture of medieval life, a world in which humans slept in two shifts, waking at night not in distress but in harmony with their natural rhythms. Literature, diaries, legal documents, and anthropological studies all corroborate the notion that segmented sleep was widespread, normal, and productive. It was a lifestyle attuned to both the physical environment and human biology, allowing people to live fully in alignment with the cycles of nature. In understanding the biology of two shifts, we gain insight into a fundamental truth about human life, that our bodies are designed to follow the natural rhythm of light and dark, that our minds are capable of productive wakefulness at night, and that culture can either support or disrupt these rhythms. Medieval sleep practices represent a convergence of biology, environment, and society, a model of living in harmony with the natural world. The first and second sleep were not mere historical curiosities. They were manifestations of human adaptation, creativity, and understanding, a testament to the ways humans have always navigated the cycles of life. In medieval Europe, life was structured in ways that modern society rarely experiences. The rhythms of the day and night were dictated not by artificial light, clocks, or technology, but by natural cycles, social obligations, and deeply ingrained cultural practices. Sleep, in particular, was not merely a biological necessity. It was a cornerstone of daily life, a rhythm that shaped relationships, social hierarchies, and community cohesion. The practice of segmented sleep, with a first sleep followed by a period of wakefulness and then a second sleep, was not just a private or domestic routine. It was embedded in the very fabric of medieval society, influencing the ways in which people interacted with one another, organized their households, and understood the world around them. Imagine a village in medieval England or France as night begins to fall. Families return from the fields, workshops, or markets, completing the work that daylight allowed. The streets are quiet, illuminated only by the occasional flicker of candlelight or torch. The sound of animals in stables, the distant barking of dogs, and the rustling of leaves in the evening breeze are the primary background noises. Within homes, the hearth crackles as the family prepares for the first sleep. Beds are arranged to accommodate multiple family members, often including children, parents, and sometimes even extended relatives. The arrangement is practical, intended to conserve warmth, provide safety, and allow for quiet movement during the night. As the first sleep takes hold, the household enters a period of collective rest. The body follows natural circadian rhythms, melatonin levels rise, and drowsiness envelops everyone, but this rest is not final. After a few hours, the household begins to stir. Individuals awaken gently, often without disturbing others. This period of wakefulness, sometimes called the watch, is a socially recognized and culturally sanctioned time. People rise for various reasons, some to pray, others to engage in personal reflection, and still others to carry out chores that require attention but not full illumination. The social dimension of this wakeful period is particularly fascinating. In many communities, the night offered opportunities for connection and interaction that were different from daytime activities. During the day, labor, trade, and communal obligations dominated, leaving little time for quiet conversation or intimate reflection. At night, however, People could engage in activities that required privacy, discretion, or contemplation. Visiting neighbors to share news, check on the sick, or exchange advice was common, conducted with the understanding that the household was observing its nocturnal rhythm. These visits were often short and purposeful, respecting the quiet of the night while fostering social cohesion and trust. Family dynamics were also deeply influenced by segmented sleep. The practice of first and second sleep created opportunities for bonding, storytelling, and guidance that were otherwise unavailable during the busy hours of the day. Parents might use the wakeful period to instruct children in moral lessons, practical skills, or the family's traditions. Grandparents, if present, often served as storytellers, passing down tales of ancestors, local legends, or religious teachings. These interactions were intimate and focused, taking place in a quiet, reflective environment. The night, therefore, was not only a time for rest, but also for education, mentorship, and intergenerational connection. Religion played a central role in this social and cultural structure. Medieval Europe was deeply spiritual, and the rhythms of daily life were intertwined with religious practice. The wakeful period between first and second sleep provided an ideal context for prayer, meditation, and ritual observance. Monks and nuns adhered to structured prayer schedules, often rising during the night to chant psalms, meditate on scripture, or perform devotional acts. Laypeople in households also engaged in personal prayer, reflection, and reading of sacred texts. The quiet of the night enhanced these practices, allowing individuals to experience a sense of closeness to the divine that was difficult to achieve during the distractions of daylight. Even in urban centers, where the bustle of markets and workshops persisted late into the evening, segmented sleep shaped social norms. Inns, taverns, and guild houses were aware of the rhythm of first and second sleep, adjusting their operations to accommodate it. Workers returning home after late shifts would often follow the same pattern, taking first sleep upon arrival and awakening later to complete personal or domestic tasks. The rhythm of segmented sleep was therefore flexible, adapting to different social contexts while remaining fundamentally aligned with natural cycles of light and darkness. The wakeful period also had practical benefits for household management. Medieval homes were often multi-functional spaces, combining sleeping quarters, kitchens, workshops, and storage areas. The quiet hours of the night allowed for chores that required careful attention, such as repairing tools, mending clothing, or preparing food for the following day. These tasks were conducted in relative calm, without interference from daytime obligations. The alignment of biological need with household management created an efficient, sustainable rhythm, integrating rest, reflection, and productivity in a way that modern society rarely replicates. Social hierarchies and community roles also influenced nocturnal behavior. Nobility, clergy, merchants, and peasants all adhered to the segmented sleep pattern, though their activities during the wakeful period differed according to status and responsibility. Nobles might use the time for reading, planning estate management, or correspondence. Clergy would engage in prayer, study, or ritual observance. Peasants focused on practical needs, tending animals, checking fences, or performing other necessary chores. Despite differences in status, the underlying rhythm of segmented sleep provided a unifying structure, linking people across social classes through a shared biological and cultural pattern. The cultural understanding of night was further reinforced by literature, folklore, and moral teaching. Stories and legends often reference night as a period of opportunity, reflection, or spiritual trial. Dreams were considered significant, sometimes providing insight, prophecy, or moral guidance. The wakeful period between first and second sleep was therefore imbued with both practical and symbolic meaning. It was a liminal time, a threshold between rest and renewed activity, offering humans a unique window for engagement with both the material and spiritual worlds. Marriage and intimate relationships were similarly influenced by the segmented sleep pattern. The quiet hours provided opportunities for couples to connect, converse, and strengthen bonds without the interruptions and labor demands of the day. This nocturnal intimacy was recognized and respected, forming a subtle but important component of social cohesion and family life. Unlike modern sleep patterns, which often compress intimacy into brief windows of evening or morning, the medieval rhythm allowed for deliberate, reflective engagement within relationships. Community safety and vigilance were also linked to segmented sleep. In many villages, the night presented risks, from wild animals to thieves or raiders. The wakeful period allowed individuals to monitor their surroundings, check on neighbors, and maintain vigilance without disrupting collective rest. In effect, the segmented sleep rhythm contributed to communal security, creating a system in which rest and alertness were balanced across the population. Those awake in the middle of the night served as informal watchmen, protecting the vulnerable and ensuring continuity of daily life. Seasonal and environmental factors further shaped these social and cultural patterns. In winter, when nights were long and daylight scarce, the period between first and second sleep could extend significantly. People took advantage of this time for extended reflection, prayer, or practical work. In summer, shorter nights led to briefer intervals of wakefulness, demonstrating a flexible adaptation to environmental conditions. This responsiveness highlights the sophistication of medieval social structures, which were closely attuned to the natural world, balancing labor, rest, and reflection in ways modern society rarely achieves. Education and intellectual life were also influenced by segmented sleep. Scholars, scribes, and students often used the wakeful hours for study, writing, or contemplation. The night offered a distraction-free environment ideal for focused thought and creative work. Monastic communities, in particular, integrated segmented sleep into their schedules, recognizing the benefits of nocturnal reflection for learning, prayer, and intellectual development. These practices reinforced the social value of wakefulness, showing that it was not merely tolerated but actively utilized for personal and communal advancement. The arts, too, benefited from the rhythms of the night. Storytelling, poetry, and music often flourished during the wakeful hours. Firelight illuminated manuscripts, instruments, and performance spaces, while the quiet of the night allowed for attentive listening and engagement. Medieval culture recognized the interplay between darkness and creativity, understanding that the mind and spirit could flourish in environments of stillness, reflection, and minimal distraction. The segmented sleep pattern, therefore, supported not only practical and spiritual needs, but also artistic and cultural expression. Religious and moral instruction was woven into these nocturnal rhythms. Parents used the quiet hours to teach children about ethics, behavior, and spirituality. Elders imparted wisdom and life lessons, often through stories or parables that reinforced communal values. The night was a time for moral reflection, a space in which individuals could internalize cultural norms and expectations. This practice strengthened family cohesion and cultural continuity, demonstrating how segmented sleep functioned as a vehicle for socialization and education. Medical and health considerations were also intertwined with social life. The wakeful period allowed for observation of minor ailments, tending to the sick, and maintaining household hygiene. Midwives, healers, and family members could address health needs during these hours, ensuring that care was provided without disrupting daytime labor. The integration of practical health measures into the rhythm of sleep illustrates the holistic approach to life that characterized medieval society, where biology, environment, and culture were closely intertwined. Despite the diversity of activities, the wakeful period maintained a sense of calm and order. Social norms emphasized discretion, quiet movement, and respect for others' rest. Individuals navigated the home and village with care, balancing personal needs with communal expectations. This discipline reinforced the social fabric, creating a rhythm of night that was both individual and collective, private and communal. The segmented sleep pattern also reinforced a profound connection between humans and the natural world. By aligning rest and activity with cycles of light and darkness, medieval people maintained an intimate awareness of environmental conditions. They observed moon phases, seasonal changes, and weather patterns, adjusting their activities and sleep accordingly. This attunement to nature was not simply pragmatic. It shaped cultural understanding, spiritual belief, and social practice. The night was a time of both reflection and action, integrating humans into the broader rhythms of life on Earth. In essence, segmented sleep in medieval Europe was a social institution as much as a biological one. It shaped family life, community interaction, religious practice, education, creativity, health, and security. It provided a structure that allowed humans to balance rest, work, reflection, and social engagement in ways modern society rarely replicates. The first sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep created a dynamic interplay of individual, household, and communal life, reflecting the integration of biology, culture, and environment. Even the decline of segmented sleep with the advent of artificial lighting and industrial schedules underscores its social significance. As nights were artificially extended and work patterns became regimented, the communal and household practices that revolved around first and second sleep gradually eroded. The quiet hours of reflection, prayer, creativity, and social connection were compressed or eliminated, demonstrating how intimately social life was tied to this rhythm. The loss of segmented sleep altered not only personal rest but also the structure of family, community, and cultural practices. In modern times, we can look back on these patterns and appreciate their sophistication. Medieval Europeans did not merely sleep in 2 shifts because they lacked technology. They did so because it aligned with their biology, their environment, and their social and cultural needs. The wakeful period between first and second sleep was a time of reflection, productivity, social connection, and spiritual engagement. It was a rhythm that supported family cohesion, community trust, and individual well-being. Understanding this practice offers insight into the richness of medieval life, revealing a society in which the night was neither idle nor wasted but vibrant, purposeful, and meaningful. The social and cultural dimensions of segmented sleep show us that human life has always been shaped by rhythms larger than ourselves. Families, communities, and societies developed structures that harmonized with biological and environmental cycles, creating practices that enhanced well-being, nurtured relationships, and fostered creativity. The wakeful hours of the night were a testament to this harmony, a period in which individuals engaged with the world and each other in ways that modern schedules rarely allow. The way we sleep today is almost unrecognizable compared to the rhythms of medieval Europe. Whereas our ancestors followed a natural pattern of first sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep, modern humans are conditioned to believe that a single, uninterrupted stretch of 8 hours is both normal and necessary. Yet, this pattern is remarkably recent, emerging only with profound technological, social, and cultural changes over the past few centuries. The transformation from segmented sleep to consolidated sleep reflects not only advances in lighting and industry, but also deep shifts in how humans perceive time, labor, and daily life. One of the most significant drivers of this change was the invention and widespread adoption of artificial lighting. In medieval times, darkness dictated human activity. Candles, oil lamps, and fires were precious, and people were acutely aware of their limitations. Night was a time for rest, reflection, and careful activity, punctuated by periods of wakefulness that aligned naturally with circadian rhythms. With the development of gas lamps in the 17th and 18th centuries, followed by the incandescent bulb in the 19th century, humans suddenly gained the ability to extend daylight artificially. Streets glowed at night, homes were illuminated with a steady, consistent light, and work and social activities could now occur well past the natural sunset. The need to adhere to natural light cycles diminished, and with it, the social and biological framework of segmented sleep began to erode. Artificial light not only extended the day, but also reshaped human perception of time. Before its invention, people measured the passage of hours in relation to sunrise and sunset, moon phases, and seasonal changes. Tasks were organized according to daylight availability, and night was understood as a distinct, limited, and necessary period of rest. As electric lighting spread, however, the night became an extension of the day. People could read, write, socialize, and work late into hours that would have been unthinkable just a century earlier. This expansion of activity into the night altered human sleep behavior, encouraging longer wakefulness and a shift toward consolidated sleep. Industrialization compounded this shift. The rise of factories, urban centers, and regimented labor schedules introduced a new dimension of time discipline. Work hours were no longer dictated by sunlight, but by clocks, bells, and schedules imposed by employers. The first industrial cities demanded long, continuous labor periods during the day, leaving evenings as the only time for rest and domestic life. The segmented sleep schedule, with its natural period of wakefulness in the middle of the night, became inconvenient and impractical. Workers were expected to awaken early for factory shifts, often at the expense of the natural rhythm that had governed human sleep for centuries. This created pressure to compress sleep into a single block, aligning with the rigid demands of industrial labor. Urbanization reinforced this trend as people moved from rural villages to crowded cities. The environmental cues that had guided natural sleep patterns, sunlight, darkness, quiet, and seasonal variation, were disrupted. Streets and homes were illuminated, noise was constant, and proximity to neighbors limited opportunities for quiet nocturnal reflection or private wakefulness. The cultural and social practices that supported segmented sleep could no longer function effectively in dense urban environments. Privacy was reduced, safety concerns were heightened, and the predictability of natural rhythms was diminished. Consequently, people increasingly adopted a consolidated sleep schedule, treating the night as a single period for rest rather than a dynamic interplay of sleep and wakefulness. Technological innovation did not stop with lighting. The invention of heating, particularly centralized heating in urban homes, altered perceptions of comfort and activity during the night. In medieval Europe, cold nights constrained activity and encouraged sleep, particularly in the hours following sunset. Fireplaces, hearths, and seasonal cold naturally structured the night. With artificial heating, however, night became more hospitable, encouraging prolonged wakefulness and reducing the pressure to sleep immediately after dusk. This, combined with artificial lighting, allowed humans to occupy the night in ways that were once impossible, further undermining the biological and cultural foundations of segmented sleep. Cultural shifts also played a significant role. The rise of leisure, entertainment, and social expectation extended the waking day. Theaters, taverns, clubs, and other venues operated late into the night, particularly in urban centers. Socializing after work became increasingly common, while reading, study, and other intellectual pursuits could continue without restriction. These cultural norms reinforced the idea that the night was a time for activity rather than reflection or meditation. As a result, the natural pattern of waking between first and second sleep became increasingly marginalized, viewed as a relic of a pre-modern, rural, and less sophisticated era. Medical and scientific discourse of the 18th and 19th centuries further reinforced the notion of consolidated sleep. Physicians began to view the natural waking period between first and second sleep as a potential disorder or sign of weakness. Historical insomnia, once considered normal, was reinterpreted as a medical condition, creating social pressure to conform to uninterrupted sleep schedules. This pathologization of natural sleep behaviors reflected broader cultural changes. The rise of industrial capitalism, urbanization, and technological dependence reframed human behavior, prioritizing efficiency, productivity, and standardization over biological rhythms. Education and labor patterns also contributed to the shift. Schools required children to rise early, and employers demanded punctuality and long continuous work periods. The segmented sleep schedule, with its natural interruption, conflicted with these expectations. Families adapted, encouraging children and adults alike to sleep in one long stretch to align with the demands of modern life. Over generations, this behavior became normalized, and the memory of biphasic sleep faded from social consciousness. It is remarkable to consider that a practice once universal became, in a few centuries, nearly invisible, relegated to historical texts and scholarly studies. The shift to consolidated sleep also affected family and social life. In medieval homes, the wakeful period between first and second sleep allowed for intergenerational interaction, education, and intimate connection. Parents could instruct children, elders could tell stories, and couples could share quiet time together. With the adoption of continuous sleep, these opportunities diminished. Family interaction became compressed into limited morning and evening hours, reducing the space for reflection, creativity, and bonding that had been central to the medieval night. Social cohesion, previously reinforced by shared nocturnal rhythms, was subtly altered, reflecting the broader social transformations of industrial and urban life. Sleep itself changed qualitatively. Consolidated sleep encouraged longer stretches of uninterrupted rest, but also created challenges. People who naturally awoke in the middle of the night were increasingly labeled insomniacs or restless, generating stress and self-blame. The flexibility inherent in segmented sleep, which had allowed humans to adapt to natural rhythms, was replaced by rigid expectation. Paradoxically, the very conveniences designed to improve human life, flighting, heating, structured labor, produced new forms of sleep disruption, forcing bodies evolved for flexibility into artificial uniformity. Despite these changes, some vestiges of segmented sleep persisted. In rural communities, pre-industrial colonies, and societies with limited access to artificial light, biphasic patterns endured well into the modern era. Anthropological studies of these populations reveal that the natural rhythm of first sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep is robust, suggesting that modern consolidated sleep is a product of cultural imposition rather than biological necessity. Sleep scientists now explore these patterns to understand human physiology and psychology. discovering that periods of natural nighttime wakefulness can enhance creativity, problem solving, and emotional regulation. The transformation of sleep in modern society is also tied to the rise of time discipline and standardization. Clocks, schedules, and social expectations dictate not only when we sleep, but also when we wake, eat, work, and socialize. Natural environmental cues, once central to human life, have been largely subordinated to artificial constructs of hours and minutes. The night, which medieval Europeans experienced as a dynamic, multipurpose period, has become a uniform block of rest, stripped of the social, cultural, and reflective dimensions that once defined it. Health and lifestyle trends have further reinforced consolidated sleep. Industrial societies prioritize efficiency and productivity, encouraging strict adherence to 8-hour sleep schedules. Modern medical advice emphasizes uninterrupted rest, circadian alignment with daylight hours, and consistency, often overlooking the historical flexibility of human sleep. While beneficial in many contexts, these recommendations represent a departure from centuries of human adaptation, illustrating the extent to which culture and technology shape biological behavior. Even leisure and technology, while providing comfort and entertainment, have contributed to this transformation. Television, computers, and smartphones extend the waking day artificially, sometimes delaying sleep onset and compressing total rest. Paradoxically, while these technologies encourage longer wakefulness, they also reinforce the expectation of uninterrupted sleep, creating tension between biological rhythms and cultural norms. The modern night is both longer and more constrained than in medieval times, highlighting the profound shifts in human sleep behavior over just a few centuries. The decline of segmented sleep also had psychological implications. The medieval wakeful period provided a natural window for reflection, meditation, and problem solving. In contemporary society, this opportunity is often lost. People wake at night with anxiety or frustration, interpreting normal arousal as insomnia or failure. The loss of culturally sanctioned nocturnal wakefulness deprives individuals of a space that once facilitated introspection, creativity, and emotional processing. Modern consolidated sleep, while efficient, may limit the adaptive and reflective functions that segmented sleep historically supported. Social organization and labor expectations continue to reinforce consolidated sleep. Urban life, night work, and long commutes require adherence to standardized schedules. Weekend sleep often attempts to compensate for weekday deprivation, further disrupting natural rhythms. In contrast, medieval life was attuned to environmental and social needs, allowing flexible, adaptive patterns that balanced rest, work, and reflection. The modern imposition of rigidity, while practical in an industrial context, represents a radical departure from centuries of human adaptation. Cultural memory of segmented sleep has all but vanished. References to first and second sleep appear rarely in literature or folklore, often treated as curiosities or historical oddities. Yet, until a few centuries ago, this rhythm was normative, shaping human behavior across Europe and beyond. Its disappearance illustrates how technology, industrialization, urbanization, and cultural expectations can reshape fundamental aspects of human life, erasing practices once universal and biologically supported. In reflecting on these changes, it becomes clear that modern sleep patterns are not inevitable. They are products of historical transformation, social expectation, and technological innovation. While uninterrupted sleep has benefits, particularly in structured societies, it comes at the cost of flexibility, nocturnal reflection, and certain social and psychological advantages. The medieval night, with its first sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep, offers a window into a world in which humans lived in harmony with natural rhythms, balancing rest, work, and reflection in ways that modern society rarely replicates. Even today, some researchers experiment with biphasic sleep schedules, rediscovering the advantages of a middle of the night wakeful period. Participants report increased creativity, improved problem solving, and a sense of calm and reflection that mirrors historical accounts. These modern explorations suggest that the wisdom embedded in medieval sleep practices has enduring relevance, highlighting the resilience and adaptability of human biology across centuries of cultural change. In conclusion, the transformation of sleep from a segmented to a consolidated pattern illustrates the profound impact of modern life on human behavior. Artificial lighting, industrialization, urbanization, cultural expectation, and technological innovation have restructured the night, creating a rhythm that is convenient, efficient, and standardized, but also distinct from the flexible, reflective, and socially integrated patterns that defined medieval life. Understanding this history provides insight not only into the evolution of sleep, but also into the ways culture, technology, and environment shape fundamental human behavior. The medieval night, with its rich interplay of first sleep, wakefulness, and second sleep, remains a testament to a time when humans lived in alignment with natural rhythms, balancing rest, work, reflection, and social connection in ways that modern society can only begin to appreciate. As we step back from the rhythms of medieval life and the sweeping changes brought by modern society, it becomes clear that the story of human sleep is far more complex and fascinating than we often realize. Sleep is not merely a biological necessity or a passive period of rest. It is a deeply intertwined aspect of human culture, physiology, psychology, and social organization. The shift from segmented sleep, with its first sleep, wakeful period, and second sleep, to the modern expectation of a single, uninterrupted block reflects not only technological innovation, but profound changes in human perception, social structure, and interaction with the natural world. By examining the arc of this transformation, we gain insight into both the past and the present, and perhaps even the future of how humans rest and live. In medieval Europe, first sleep and second sleep were so ingrained in daily life that they were rarely remarked upon. They were as natural as sunrise and sunset, embedded in the structures of home, family, community, and religion. People rose during the night not out of necessity alone, but also to engage in tasks, reflection, prayer, creativity, and social interaction. This wakeful period, though brief, was rich in purpose and meaning. It offered opportunities for connection, contemplation, and productivity that modern consolidated sleep often compresses into short windows of evening or morning. The night, in this sense, was not merely a backdrop for rest. It was a dynamic and meaningful space in which life unfolded. Modern sleep, by contrast, is structured around efficiency and standardization. We are taught to sleep for 8 uninterrupted hours, to align our rest strictly with societal schedules, and to view nighttime wakefulness as a problem to be solved. This approach has clear advantages in the context of industrial and post-industrial societies, where rigid labor schedules, urban noise, and artificial light dominate. Yet it also represents a departure from centuries of human adaptation, from a lifestyle attuned to natural light cycles, seasonal changes, and flexible rhythms. By forcing the body into an uninterrupted sleep block, we often suppress a natural wakeful window that can be psychologically, emotionally, and even creatively beneficial. One of the most striking lessons from history is the adaptability of human sleep.